Alright guys, fire up the old 7711 here. Oh.
Nice. And now I'd set the parking brake for this machine, if there was one. So that's what we're gonna be working on today. That and some other stuff. Let's leave it in gear for the highest possible chance of me starting this up and driving it through a wall or whatever. All right, so my regular viewers know I bought this thing close to a year or so ago now, and I've gotten to use it for a grand total of about 2 hours because that's how long it worked before the, the fact that the oil pickup tube had come off and it was no longer pumping oil caused the engine to self-destruct. It ate a bearing. So, buddy of mine, Mechanic Steve, and I rebuilt this thing. Today we're gonna be going through and fixing a few little odds and ends. It's got an oil leak from this cover here. We're gonna go through and clean out this oil filter because, you know, when a bearing comes apart inside of stuff, you never really know if there's gonna be chunks in there or whatever. Also, neither the PTO clutch nor the parking brake works because the cables are all rusted solid. So I got these, we got legit like check. Gotta make sure my address isn't on there now. We gotta make sure we got it legit from the Czech Republic parts here. Same with this fan. The plastic blades on the one on there are all like cracked and missing chunks. Block heater, because that's leaking. Hose clamps, because we lost one. And some studs, because somebody managed to break one before we got the tractor. So let's see what we can do. All right, so this thing, as you can see, uses a centrifugal type oil filter. And so, you know, when Mechanic Steve and I rebuilt this, we spent, I think, like days, plural, going through and doing everything we possibly could to get everything as clean as possible. And now it's my fear that there's a bunch of bearing material from the few things we couldn't get that's stuck inside of this filter. So we'll just let this run out and then we'll open it up and clean it. I will say that oil only looks a tiny little bit dark, so that's a really good sign. Man, I'm starting to see some gunk come out of this filter, but you know what? That's why they call it break-in oil. All right, we're about to see what kind of crap we got. Part of me says I hope there's a lot in here because that means the filter caught a lot. Part of me says I hope there isn't because that means Steve and I got things pretty clean. Looks like we got things pretty clean. Paper towels! All right, so this paper towel holds the entirety of the nasty crap which we have caught. And the oil looks pretty decent to me. So I honestly think, I mean, look at how clean this is. I honestly think we got the engine pretty clean, and then this stuff, maybe a little bit of gunk from like some oil passages or something we couldn't get to, and then all those new parts we put in the engine. I got a little bit more to scrape out of there, but I mean, I can't complain about that. Man, I shouldn't say it because I'm gonna jinx myself, but I honestly don't understand how people manage to break studs off of things. Because I've done a lot of kind of dense stuff in my life, and even I've yet to accomplish that. However, I did strip one out once, but to my credit, it was one of those deals where it's a left-handed thread stud on an older truck. But anyway, so this is what we got. We got one stud that's completely missing. You can see like straight through the wheel there. And then we have another one that's partially broken off, and I got some replacement lug nuts because these are really cheap as well. So we're just gonna see if we can sort of hammer those out a little bit. I guess there's like an O-ring or something that goes in there. We're just a screw out of this. And but whatever the case, we had a small leak coming out of there. So I go on the internet and think, oh, I'll just order a new one, you know. How bad can it be? So I got this one. Nice, you know, American-made thing, you know, comes with the cord and the little cap and everything. Buy it off the internet. And I get the thing, and for the life of me, I cannot get this thing to seal at all or stop leaking. I messed with this thing for probably like 3 solid hours this morning. It was a total pain, and I realized that this is used goods. This is, you know, it's essentially open box. Somebody, where's this original screw? I think it's, no, it's not that one. Wherever it went, the screw that was in that thing, you know, is all stripped out, so that's why I couldn't get the thing to seal, because there's this little metal clip in here which like pulls from the back of the block heater and like sandwiches all this together against the side of the block. Screws are completely stripped out, screws singular. The threads in this basically on the new one are all jacked up, so I gotta come out here and like tap new threads and try multiple screws, and then I'm messing with O-rings and copper washers trying to get it to seal, because the hole, this round hole in the new one isn't round, it's like all slopped out, because whoever, you know, I guess tried to make it work somehow managed to do that. But man, you know, that's what an amazing time we live in. You know, I could just stay in bed and not even come out here and break stuff, because I can just go on the internet and buy parts that show up pre-broken and pay new prices for the privilege of doing so, right? Anyway, I think I finally got this in here. It's been a couple minutes and I don't see any water appearing. I see a little bit of wetness around here, but I think that's from the multiple other times I tried jacking with this. I had to get really creative. I tried like 3 different screws before I got one that worked, and the problem is they wouldn't seal against that piece of sheet metal there, which makes up the body of this. So what I had to do, I went all out, and I know people whine about this in the comments, but they whine about everything, so it doesn't really matter. I just used some green Loctite of all things. For those that are not familiar with this stuff, it is no joke. He's knocking over tools. It's their their retaining compound or whatever. It's made for like holding pressed-in components together. If you have a pressed-in component that's a few thousandths too small, you put that stuff in there, then press it in, and it expands and seals. I've used it for all sorts of stuff. I've never had any problems yet. Using it to take up a gap in a block heater like this, between the screw and the thing, not between the block heater and the engine block, that's just large enough for some water to trickle out. This makes me a little nervous, but it might work. If it doesn't work, I'm going to completely flip my lid, because I've worked on this for hours already today, and I'm just going to say, hey, you know what? I live in Texas. We don't really even need block heaters here, except for like a week a year. And so I'm going to find a freeze plug or whatever they're called and jam it in there, and then go on the internet and buy one of those magnetic things that you just stick to the side of the engine. Again, the like week out of the year here we'd even use this. All right, well, now that my block heater adventures are over, what do we have to do now? Rage for a little longer, and then we're going to put in a new fan, because the one on the tractor is all like old and broken. Alright, so even though it is something which greatly pleased Minor Hillbilly, I figured it's probably not the best idea in the world to have this air hose sealed with a zip tie. So I got my biggest hose clamp, and it's like a 1/4 inch too short to go around this. And then I ordered a bunch of these online, specialty only for this task. And as you can imagine, they're about a 1/2 inch too long. They don't shrink down enough to go around this. So, you know, just... well, quite frankly, I'm more surprised when things don't go this way. But the good news is I still have this monster zip tie left over from the tachometer install. This is what Autometer gives you with the tachometer to attach your thingamajigger to the alternator, which is what it picks up on, because, you know, it's a diesel. There's no ignition system. So we'll see if this can shrink down long enough. Mexico's finest stainless steel here, so it says. Oh, this might actually work. All right, now the problem is I was not able to figure out how to use this. Oh, yeah, you just use it like any other zip tie. All right, now. Wow, how about that? Hoarding stuff does pay. Occasionally. Hey, it's my marginally more lucky day. Now I just have to figure out what to do with an entire package of these giant things, which showed up and aren't any good, and I think it's longer than 30 days, so I can't send them back, but yeah, I'll see how it goes. Man, I know that it's always best to err on the side of a little too big than a little too small, but what kind of vehicle has an alternator that you need this to go around? Oh, all right, hey, that wasn't so bad. All right, so I managed to get the levers moving just fine, but something still wasn't right, and that's when I realized that this entire bracket that the levers pivot on, one on that side, one on that back side there, is bent. Someone I don't know. Look, you know, this is why I stand by the saying, if it comes to damage on farm equipment, if you have to ask, you just don't want to know. I put some washers under here so we'll bend it a little too far, and the elastic effect of the steel should make it spring back and be hopefully somewhat perfect-ish. So we got the wheel bearings put back together, got all 4 bearings re-greased. You know, the 2 on that side actually looked pretty decent. There was even some semi-modern looking grease in there. This side, however, not so much. I took the little hubcap off there, and it's full of like decomposed, rancid, like, you know, Eastern European, ancient, disgusting grease. And I knew that was going to be bad, so I got that cleaned out as best I could. I got all of them packed with grease as best as I could, put these things in here. Now, one problem this tractor had is these are not the original wheels. They're like stamped USA on it, and for some other reason I know they're not original. So this wheel used to come in here and rub right there on this steering rod. So what I did is I took the wheels and flipped them around, so now the dish is facing in instead of out. Normally you have to be careful doing things like this because you don't want to cantilever the weight of this thing out really far past the bearings because it's hard on them. But I think it's almost made to be set up either way depending on how you want it. And I say that because you look where the bearing is in there, it's still like, you know, well into this tire, so I think it'll be fine. It's still pretty much perfect. Now what we have to deal with is a little string of bad luck I've had, not just with the tractor, but with the gauges on the tractor. I made a video a few months ago putting in gauges on the tractor, and I got a really nice Bosch, you know, electronic oil pressure gauge, and then it just randomly stopped working. I was like, what's going on? Did the tractor lose oil pressure again? Brought back some less than ideal memories. So I swapped it out to the old mechanical gauge we used when we first start an engine to make sure it has pressure, and it was fine. So I just got a replacement gauge, and right out of the box it doesn't work. You know, put this back on. Again, tractor's making plenty of oil pressure. So I went and bought another gauge. Now, it's a little frustrating because, you know, you pay good money for what's supposed to be a reputable brand stuff, you know, Bosch things, and you get 2 of them defective right out of the box. But whatever the case, I'm not going to buy more of these electronic oil pressure gauges, at least not for a tractor, because the risk you run with the manual ones is that, you know, the tube comes apart or something and it shoots hot oil like all over your legs if you're driving a car or whatever. But obviously in this, it's pretty well enclosed, and you know, it's not like you'd be stuck in freeway traffic driving this thing. So, at least hopefully not. I guess anything's possible. So I'm just gonna go back to using the manual mechanical gauges because there's nothing electronic on them, so they're actually reliable and they normally work properly. Anyway, let's see if we can get this swapped out with oil pressure gauge number 3. Well, that's one mystery solved. Also, I don't think we're losing any fluid out of here. It's been a couple days I've been working on this thing on and off, and that's still looking pretty good. And over here, I think I finally got the leak from up here stopped. Hopefully that is just from me working on this. But what I did is I took this cover off. I took some, I think it's different than regular RTV. It's some gasket sealer, and just applied a super thin layer to one side of that gasket. And I just let the tractor run for a little while here, and I think normally that would have been enough to make it start leaking. But I think we're actually good.